Hey everyone, today I have John and Giovanna, the producers of the upcoming feature film Neon Bleed, with me to talk about how they managed to finance their debut film, get it into production, and now get all the way to completing the film and submitting it to festivals. How you going, guys?
Good.
Good. Very good.
Good to see you again, Alexi. It's like we were talking just before this about how, kind of at the beginning pumping us up, and now we're wrapping up this process. So it's good to be with you.
Coming right in at the end for all the glory.
Yeah.
That's right. I like your style.
John's like this too, We'll do a project at home and he's like, oh, let me just put the finishing touch on.
Yeah. Well, let's go back right to the start. So even like before we had met, take me through where you were at in your filmmaking journey and how you came to decide that you would, go on this journey of making a feature film.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. I went to film school, graduated 2016. I made a short film as my thesis film that did pretty well in the festival circuit, a few smaller festivals, won an award, and then I made another short like a year out of college. And that one was kind of my big confidence boost to say, yes, I'm going to go this route of, doing the creative side, writing scripts, directing as much as I can. Yeah. And over the course of the next couple of years, really kind of self-taught myself like the feature structure, writing feature screenplays and figuring out if I could write really well, not only would I be able to put scripts in front of people, but hopefully, maintain that creative control and make feature films. At least that would be the quickest route to do that. That was sort of like my gut intuition. And
when you first started writing, actually too, other than your college short film, in 2016, when he made that next one, that's when we actually had met. And he was just starting his writing process because John always just wanted to direct. And so he hadn't really given writing a thought. And for him, I think it was important to, like he was saying, kind of do the entire thing himself instead of wait for something to come to him, like a script to come to him that someone would ask him, oh, can you direct this? He's like, I can't just wait around. I have to do something. And so that kind of started the whole journey, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's really what calls people and sees them through a whole career trajectory of really directing over a long period of time, is that hunger, that drive. It's like, regardless of the budget level or what company is on board, you're going to find a way to make your project. So and I think it was after that short film that we collaborated on, the second one that I directed, writing scripts and then getting them out into the industry, right? So I went to college in Los Angeles. Giovanna and I met in acting class in Los Angeles, and so we were like in the middle of the machine, right? And that I could talk for 4 hours about what that's like, right? To be a filmmaker in Los Angeles and Hollywood versus anywhere else in the world, it's a completely different experience. So you're kind of like swimming upstream just naturally because there's so much energy around what things mean in terms of packaging and talent, and having companies look at your scripts and reject it, right? And say, well, who are you? You don't even have a feature under your belt. You're fresh out of college. Like, what do you know? You need to, go either the corporate ladder through companies, through the development department, if you want to be a creative, or, be on set, right, as like a grip or a PA, and pay your dues. And, I did plenty of that on the side, but again, just trying to figure out, how can I cut my teeth as a director as soon as possible to build those skills? Because
there is like, and I'm sure it's like this in a lot of places too, but specifically in LA, it's like, this is the way we do it. Like, this is the exact way that you can get this career. And we're like, I don't think so. I don't want that. So, it's like, it felt like every chance you'd end up veering off course and ending up in another aspect of the film industry and not the exact one you wanted to get to.
Yeah.
Right. It's so easy to like, if you're on the EAC, the East Australian current.
Wow.
It's so easy to get spun out into one of those exits and get dumped out and land somewhere where you don't want to be. And then you're like, you feel like you're stuck in the mud. Like, I'm working for this producer at this production company. The energy kind of sucks because they don't know what type of material they want to engage with. And I mean, that
it's
again,
ever changing. It's ever changing. But yeah, so, it's that thing where they, you know, they get you close to your dream, but it's not the exact dream. And I think it really is just so easy to get off kilter because you want that little bit of validation or that the instant gratification of like, oh, I'm in the career, I'm in the film industry. And then it's how many years do you get stuck there before you realize, wait, this is not what I set out to do. And so, it can be great, but you can also get lost, you know?
Yeah. So with those sort of like ideas in my head, you know, COVID really presented a great opportunity because everything kind of shut down, and it was this, you know, sort of like ripple effect through my body, through my physiology. Like, is this going to be it? Is this going to set, you know, these leads that I had, getting scripts in front of people, working with a manager who was gearing me up to pitch at companies for the couple of feature scripts that I had? Is COVID, is this going to be, you know, that sort of like, you know, whatever storm, right? We view it, that's the metaphor, this storm that knocks us all back 5 years, 10 years, maybe, right? So, but, you know, I guess like every adversity offers opportunities, and I sat myself down in April after a month of, you know, wallowing around, like, what are we going to do? What's going to happen here? And I said, you know what, I'm going to, you know, kind of put all those other scripts on the back burner right now, write something that I can make in as little locations as possible, as self-contained as possible, with the actors, because at this time, you know, COVID, it was about 4 years after we both went to this acting studio that really opened us up to a community of creatives, and specifically actors as well. You know, how can I write a script that's self-contained and then put an ensemble of, you know, the best actors I know, you know, my closest, most trustworthy, you know, actor collaborators, who that shorthand will be there. And, you know, kind of thinking in the vein of like theater, like having it rehearsed so that it's like, you know, as low budget as possible, as few a days, as shooting schedule as possible, yet something I can think out and design in a way where it's, you know, genre driven, something that showcases where I am right now as a director, my skill set, where it is right now. So thinking about all those contributing factors, and at the same time, you know, starting to think about self-producing it too, like knowing I'm not going to have a company backing me up. The financing isn't going to fall out of the sky.
You wanted to do something that you could do and do it to the nth degree, instead of like aiming for a huge thing where obviously you would need an enormous budget for VFX and all these other things. Like, what can I do and do really well at this budget level, which feels fairly doable. But even then it was still like, you know, we had never done it before, so it was still scary.
Right. And that's where I was surfing YouTube, like typing in literally like, you know, independent producing, self-producing, first feature film, all the keywords, right? And I don't remember how I stumbled into your videos, but, you know, got into like 2 or 3 of them. And I mean, this is a testament to you, Alexi, just captivated by your confidence and your articulation with your experience. And that's like a huge thing, because you could talk to people, you talk to like 99 out of 100 people in Los Angeles, and they have experience, but they don't have experience in what, you know, we were looking for specifically with like bootstrapping, you know, a feature film. And people that had gone through that whole process, like yourself, like we were talking about before we jumped on, about wearing multiple hats at once and you know, being scrappy, essentially. I was taken in by your videos. I watched, you know, 4 or 5 of them and started literally taking notes on a legal pad off of your videos. And then, you know, one day noticed after a few days of watching them that you linked your accelerator program, and I clicked the link and, you know, got more information on that and set up a call. You know, I think you plugged it at the end of one of your videos. So set up a call, and then I told Giovanna, I was like, okay, I got the script. You know, by this point I had written the script for Neon Bleed, and that's what I think is very important too, which I'm sure we can go into and talk about, but separating the creative and knowing when to put that in a box and then put your producer hat on and approach it, you know, as like a logistical jigsaw puzzle that you need to configure.
I do remember the day that you brought his video to me and you're like, I want to call this guy. I was like, okay, let's do it.
Maybe like, it was the accent. I was like,
I was about to say, like, he's in Australia, why are we calling him?
That's
quite the opposite. We're like, let's go to Australia. No.
I think all of the first, you know, investor meetings we took, it when we, you know, started bringing collaborators aboard, we're like, oh yeah, we're working with this Australian producer, and everyone's like, oh really, Australia? You live in Los Angeles, you're in Hollywood, like really? He's in Australia? I was like, yeah, I'm telling you, this guy is he's our jet fuel,
our
man.
guru. Yeah.
Good talking point, if nothing else. So we'll definitely want to dive into that, like into production and separating creative and producing. But just going back for a second, do you think there was a point, and obviously COVID is a huge catalyst, right? But was there a buildup of years of not seeing projects materialize or not feeling like you could see your way through? Or was there one event that just made you go, yeah, you know what, stuff it, like, let's just do this ourselves? Like, take me through just that and just getting to that point and being like, nah, I'm going to make a feature.
Well, I'm going to start this one because I got to witness it and it was not pretty. No, it's like,
oh boy, yeah, you're definitely going to need to edit this.
Edit this all out. No. So went back kind of when John was discussing, like, he had started writing and he had started writing like the short film that we both did together. And then he started his first feature and it was good. And then he wrote a second feature and a third. So he had written, what, 3 or 4?
3 before Neon Bleed.
Okay.
Well, 4, including the one I wrote in film school, is my first feature. But
okay. So he had written about 3 to 4 screenplays. And we have a close agent friend who's actually like a very big agent in LA. And he is just like a very, very straightforward, but supportive person. So he would read these scripts and give John notes. Like on the first one, he gave him a few notes, you know, so here's what I would look for in actually looking to make this. And then by the time John got to his third script, not yet Neon Bleed, which we made, he was like, you're a great writer. This is all great stuff. Like even from the first one, it's been great, but this is the one you need to make. However, that one will be our second film because it is a slightly bigger budget. And so John, after that, he's like, all right, I'm ready. We got to make one of these because we were shopping them around and people were like loving them. I mean, I think that first one that you had written, a company was like, oh, we actually just took on something similar to this. So it's like, it felt like we were pitching to
it felt like it was at that caliber.
We were right there.
It was just like, it's one of those things where it's like timing in the industry. It's like timing is everything. And, you know, when people commit to something, they don't want to not, you know, follow through with that or pivot or whatever. And it's like,
and it was,
there's just so many factors.
And it was like, you know, that thing where it's like, oh, we're not making anything like this right now. Or, oh, we just took one on like this. So you're I just feel like a tennis ball, you know what I mean? Like, so that's how it was feeling. But through that period of time, like we're summarizing it in like a few paragraphs here, but there's a lot of time in between those moments. So it like felt very drawn out. Maybe looking back, it won't feel as drawn out, but it felt extremely like we got so close and then didn't happen. We were calling in all our favors, anyone we had met, networking and any facet of life there. And it just felt like we were close, but no cigar every time. And that's when we were like, you know what? Why are we going to wait on other people to say okay to us? Like, why don't we say okay to us?
Yeah.
You know? And so that's kind of
the way to put it.
John was like, blink, blink, blink. And that's when he went on YouTube and there you were. So.
Yeah, I don't know if that answered the question. But.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you think that if you mentioned earlier, like, you know, wanting to, this is what I kind of got from it, you know, kind of blaze your own trail, if that's a good way to put it. Where do you think that comes from for you both of you? Is that something that you feel like it's innate? Is it something that you think you developed, or is it, because I think looking at independent filmmakers, they're like entrepreneurs, right? Like they're out there, they're raising their own finance, it's DIY. And so where do you think that comes from for you two?
I think we both have large control issues. Massive control issues. No. That's probably the most truthful and succinct answer, but I'll let Giovanna.
No, I think you're 100% right. I think that, I've worked for a lot of people in my life in different, fields, mostly in entertainment. Like I grew up dancing, and I was in professional shows and whatever. And I always loved getting the job. Like you just want that yes from someone else. I just wanted to be part of someone else's thing to get the yes. And I remember my dad very early in life being like, well, why do you want to be in someone else's dance company? Just make your own. And I was like, are you crazy? I was like, no, because I just wasn't there yet, at that time. And I just wanted the yes. But then the older I got, I would start getting into things. And it was not too long before I was like, oh my God, I can't work for this person. I can't work for it. And it's not because they were doing anything wrong. It's just because I needed to be the boss. And to just close my part of that story, or this story, when I was 3 years old, my dad's favorite memory was, I think my mom was leaving to go somewhere, and I closed the door behind her and I spun around, and all at once I was like, Mom's gone, now I'm the boss. And he just thought, he's like, well, what about me? I don't even rank here anywhere. So he would tell you, I've been like this my whole life. But then when it comes to all of the consistency of I know I can do this, I know it has to get done, whatever, I give that all to John, because I have moments where I'm like, are we nuts? Are we crazy? And he's okay with that crazy. He's like, yep, and we're doing it. So I think you can talk about your side of that, but I firmly believe you always knew you were going to do this.
Yeah. I think it comes, you kind of get into more spiritual, self-help book territory with this question. But I think my drive, you mentioned it, it comes from a very innate place. You just get these feelings, and I guess they can manifest as anxiety too, right? When you feel like you're waiting on someone giving you that validation, signing the deal, saying this script's great, let's go, we're gonna make your film. It's sort of like that feeling you're working towards, something's pushing you toward, manifesting art, I guess is what it is. And I think what it comes down to is water will follow gravity in the pathway of least resistance. And I think almost, in a funny way, doing this whole process, finding you, the stars kind of aligning in our way, it was the pathway of least resistance, even though on paper it looks harder, right? We got to go out and raise money and, put a whole crew, and we're responsible for everything, sinking or swimming. That's easier for us. I guess it's maybe it's genetic makeup, maybe it's, just that drive you talk about. But I think I was, talking to G about this yesterday, because she was on the phone with one of our film friends, and one of our film friends has a script, and she's thinking about self-producing it as well. And they had this good conversation about feeling like you have the drive today versus feeling like, you don't have the drive, and that sort of sinking feeling of oh man, what have I got myself into? Right. And I think, again, this is why it's such a spiritual, almost religious sort of realm you get into, because it's putting yourself behind the thing, if that makes sense. It's the thing leads, right?
It needs to be bigger than you and more important, so that you don't diminish the need to do it. Because otherwise you just be like, that's just my earthly want. This isn't that important in the grand scheme of life. So much more important things are happening in the world. And it's no, you really have to believe that it is your duty to do this. Right. And you've made films as a child, all his family members are oh, you were always okay. He was always directing, even at age 7, he had a camera. Because I think, from the minute I met him, was this is what you clearly were always going to do. There was no wavering in that knowing. But then, you know, you get older and like the weight of the world comes in and it sometimes changes you as a person, but not John. He was like, I'm doing it.
I'm doing it.
We're doing it.
But well, actually, I don't know if you heard of this book. It's called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
No,
highly recommend it. That one and The War of Art as well is fantastic with Stephen Pressfield. But I mean, actually, both similar subject matter. They talk about, you know, ideas and art being like this fourth dimension that's all around us at all times, and like, how do ideas come, right? Like, you know, is it the mind? It's something in another dimension. So, you know, again, we're getting a little woo woo here, but I think that's what it comes down to. And I always like, whether it's meditation or some sort of faith life, and just taking each day as its own container of like, what am I going to do today? You know, you just listen to like, where is the energy taking you? So
and then getting over, I think when you're also creative, you have like accidentally a fantasy about how everything was going to pan out, like the how. And I read in a book too, it's like, no, you get to choose the what, you don't get to choose the how. So you have to decide what you're going to do and then trust that it's already coming to you. And certain days you're like, well, I just had this image of like sending this to someone and maybe getting a bunch of no's, but one day then being like, this is exactly what we've been looking for, you know. And that sometimes just doesn't happen. But then now being on the other side of it and like having made the film, I'm so glad that didn't happen, because I probably never would have done this. Like, and this was so much better. So
I think that like belief is so important when you're making a feature film, because it is so hard. I mean, I'll be making a film and there'll be absolute moments of doubt, you know? And like the only way to get through that is to believe like that you're doing it for some reason that is you know, important. Because otherwise, like, it is so hard. Why would you go through the pain?
It's like that. There's like a Miles Davis quote, I think it is, or maybe it's John Coltrane. It's like, I don't play the jazz plays me. And that whole idea of like, you just need to follow something. Like you need to listen and follow, and that's how you execute. And that's an idea. That's a premise that you're really excited about. For Neon Bleed, I got really into this idea about a pop star who was spiraling out of control. And it hadn't been done, and I wanted to explore it. It was just that curiosity. I want to follow this, you know, this tributary, this river of interest, right? And see what comes of it. And then again, not knowing how it's going to manifest, but just following that initial curiosity.
You were reminding me of a different quote, which was, I don't know who said it, you'll know, but it was like, oh, when anyone asks me if I can do this or if I should do this, I tell them no, because anyone that would take the no was never going to do it anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it was a Matt Damon quote.
Oh, Matt.
We're gonna need a quote at the end of this video, I reckon.
You opened up a can of worms.
Been dropping them.
We read a lot. We read a lot over here.
Anyway, next question. We'll wrap that one up.
All right. We read a lot of books. We could give you a book list.
Let's come back to creative hat off, producing hat on. YouTube video leads to me. We have a call. You decide that, you know, you're going to work with me. So what happens next? Where does it go from there?
You know, like I said, you know, we put the creative hat behind us for a second, and we put the script on the table. We approached it as a, you know, more of like a blueprint engineering document, right? You know, your resources, you know, jumping into, you know, your system, the modules of the accelerator, they were, you know, first of all, compliments to you for laying it out and I'm sure it was a bunch of trial and error, but figuring out, you know, how to articulate the information and lay it out in a way where, you know, producers, filmmakers can feel like not only are they learning, but they're starting to apply while they're doing it, you know? And that's huge. It's really huge. And I think that's the best way to learn, you know, is to immediately roll up your sleeves and start, you know, picking up the clay and moving the clay.
Yeah, John was showing me a few of the videos that were just on YouTube, and your organization in my brain, I was like, yes, okay. It was so calming. It's like those things on Pinterest where they're like, isn't this satisfying? It's like everything in order. It's like colors of a crayon box. But yeah, you were very organized, and you were very like, how do I put that? You just were very matter of fact. You're like, here's what you're going to do. And I was like, that's all for me. Once someone is like, here's what you got to do, and I'm like, oh yeah, got it. And then I can run with it. But I need that person to kind of say that first. And every step of the way, I just followed you. I didn't need to feel like I had to make it up. It took a lot of pressure off. I'm like, this is a formula. We're following it. He's there to talk to the whole time if we have questions. And then we just ran with it. I mean, it was.
Yeah, I would say it felt scary, right? Committing and committing to the accelerator, because it was like, that's like that first nudge off the cliff, and you got to go, you're going over the edge. Like you got to commit, you're going to be in free fall. But immediately it helped to see that there was a system and a structure to it, because we could take the pressure off, right? We like do the week 1 module and go through it, sit and take notes. And then you gave the week 1 action items. And that was it. It was like, okay, we know what we need to do for this week, and nothing more, nothing less, right? And that
it talks to your inner child. It was like, today, here's your homework assignment. Now go do it. And you're like, yes, I will do it. And it's like, it's hard, and I think that's why a lot of people have a hard time when they leave like college and then they're out in the real world. They have to self-regulate. And so we've been doing that forever. But then to come back and have the comforts of a structure and have someone like assign you something again, you're like, oh, this is nice. You know what I mean?
This is familiar.
It's a little more comforting and less pressure on yourself to make it up, because that's a whole other job on its own. Is actually making up the order of it. And it's like, why would you not listen to someone who has come up with this and has done it themselves numerous times? Like, why would I come up with that entire chronology myself when you've already done it and you've clearly had success doing it? So I was very confident.
And it felt like from week 1, that week 1 module where you sort of laid out your philosophy, how you look at film production, and how you look at the industry. It was really, spot on. For us, it connected with us, right? We felt like we were in Hollywood within the big machine, but we needed to find a way to kind of, move around it and maneuver with it and around it as well. And really fall into stride with like an independent frame of mind. And that's what you offered. And we felt that in week 1. And again, you get that like excitement, it primes you to motivate you to say, okay, by the end of these modules, this program, I'm going to be in a position to, first of all, know what I need to do, right? To start going out and raising finance, but also feel like I can do it confidently. Like I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just like, hey, I need $250,000 to make my movie, and I'm 5 years out of film school, and will you fund my first movie? And it's like, no, there's a whole way to go about it where it is professional. You're offering something, right? You're offering an opportunity to be a part of a small business, essentially. With all those beliefs and mission behind it.
And even like the structure of the emails and things that you gave us that helped word things in a way that was very personable, but very business-like and straightforward and very direct and
effective.
Everything about it was effective. Exactly. I was looking up because forever we've had the new age filmmaker versus the old way of doing things like up on our board. So
give us a little look.
Actually,
no, he had just taken it down because
we have all
we've already put up
the next movie.
The scheduling that you've created for our next film. So that's what's up there.
Those schedules up there.
There we go.
So that's what's up there currently. But
oh, nice.
Yeah, I think our new age filmmaker is over there sitting there. But forever that's up, because if you ever forget, those printouts that you gave us were like
the pinups.
The pinups. You would always just remind yourself, like, they was just very encouraging every step of the way. Like if you forget and you're having an off day and you're doubting yourself, there was some encouragement like every step. So that was great.
Awesome. And so you set a private investment target of how much was it?
I think initially it was 150K. I think when we talked, when we took that first phone call, I had mentioned to you, I think we're trying to do this for 150K. And then getting into the modules and building out the finance plan and the budget, you know, just moving those scales and moving the numbers around. We were like, I think we're going to have to do this for 250K, you know,
that budget,
especially with
that
COVID
budget file haunts my dreams. Cause I felt like it was like in my retinas when I would close my eyes at night, cause we would keep going back to it, but it was like the only way to really know. And you helped us with that. Like when we kind of plugged numbers in, right? And then we had a meeting with you and you're like, in my experience, this needs to go up a little. This needs to go down a little, because that was the scariest part for me, is like, how do you know how much a certain line item on there is going to cost when I've never done it? And there you were helping us with that. So like, that was terrifying for me. And then it wasn't terrifying once we went through that module. So that was my most feared part, is the money part.
So run us through that. So you set this target, like you've done the budgeting, you set a target at 250. How did you go and raise that money?
Yeah, I think the key was to, you know, put that finance plan together, and line it up with the budget, and make sure that each dollar really earned its place. And again, going back to how I conceived the script, and the whole you know, ethos behind this project, the work ethic behind this project was, let's try to put as much money on the screen as possible, you know. I think we learned a lot too throughout the process of, you know, paying people and figuring out, you know, we can't just scrimp on, you know, paying people not minimum wage or lower than minimum wage, but just enough, if that doesn't feel like that's going to motivate them, right? Like, you want people to come to work, being excited because everyone's excited they're making a film, but also feel like, you know, they're earning what they should earn, you know, and that gives them the validation and the confidence and this sort of like reciprocal relationship that they have with you as a producer. But yeah, I think once that number kind of settled, you know, and this kind of goes back to sort of the work we had been putting in LA prior to, you know, self-producing, is, you know, we had a network of people that if they weren't, you know, had direct access to financiers or private investors, you know, this was it, right? Like for us, I saw this again, you know, being COVID, I'm like, you know, my career, my aspirations in film could be set back 5 to 10 years. So, you know, no holds bar, you know, not doing it in a way of like, you know, brutally honest, like, hey, I need to make this film, but, you know, priming myself every day, being like, you know, put yourself out there, right? Impress upon people how much this means to you, and let that kind of be the fuel behind those, how you craft the emails, you know, how you take those phone calls, and how you conduct yourself, like G said, in a personable way, and making sure, I mean, clarity, right? Clarity of communication, and you know, being upfront about your intentions.
And crucial. Just if you have good relationships with people that like they have money themselves, or, you know, they have access to someone with money, take all the leads. Don't be afraid of the no, because even when you get a no, you're right back where you started. You didn't actually lose anything, but it's just like that ego thing you have to shut off. And, you know, nobody likes to hear no, and nobody likes to feel like, I mean, I was not raised in a way where we were told to ask for things. It was kind of like, keep your head down and don't ask for things. And you're good. You never need anything. And I'm like, okay. So I had to really reset in my personality. Like, I did have a friend at the time that this person was incredible asking for things. I mean, anything. And I was like, unbelievable, because I would watch her do it. It was actually kind of annoying because I would watch her do it and I'm like, she would get it every time. And so I'm like, oh, people actually do want to help. They do want to help you. And especially if you reach out, like what John already touched on, in a way that's like, look, here's what I have to do. Like, I must do this. I would love you to be a part of it. I know what I'm asking. Like, I know it's a big ask. It would mean the world to me if you would believe in us and support us. And again, this goes back to the structures you've given us, but like, here's what you can expect in return. Here's our goal. And here's what we hope to achieve in proving you right in investing in us. Because when you do your first one, you really don't have a huge track record of any proof of of your abilities. Like they saw our short films, they saw plays we've done, so they knew our quality. And we started with those people that had supported us, even in those very small endeavors. We're like, you know what we can do. This is what we want to do on this next level. Can you please help us? Like, it would mean the world to us. And a lot of them were very, very happy to do that.
And I think the other thing too, which will definitely play more of a part into, us going out and raising finance for the next project, but having a vision of where you want to go over the long term, not just with the one project, but how that's going to be a stepping stone, the next rung in the ladder to, projects down the line, project number 2, project number 3 and 4. And I'd like to think, our production company is called La Familia Pictures, and I'd like to think we've started to craft like a whole culture around, who we are as a production company, the types of movies we want to make, and what we want those movies to do in the world, right? Like as absolutely as commercially viable pieces of entertainment, but also, hopefully with something behind them, something inspirational. Like, because I always go back to this being, it goes as far back as like 8 years old, 10 years old, watching Star Wars or Indiana Jones, Spielberg, Scorsese, Nolan, Christopher Nolan stuff, all the directors I look up to, who I feel like have contributed to my life, influenced who I am by those images that I saw on the screen and what I felt in the movie theater. We want to be able to do that. We just,
the catharsis you get out of watching, or the comfort even of watching TV or certain movies, and like, they really do make you feel not alone. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, I feel that exact way, and this person knew that. And it's like, for them, they made that thing, and you got to feel, like, oh, connected. I'm connected. I'm not alone. So I think it's much more important than, because it can sound frivolous to be in the entertainment industry, but it's really not. Like, if we had no entertainment, on TV, like, or movies that are now on TV, or even at the theater, it's like, what would we be doing? You'd be sitting there thinking in your own head all day. You'd go insane. Like, this actually keeps people.
You'd be thinking too much about COVID and the war in Ukraine, I guess.
And it's stressful, and you need hope, and you need truth, and you need, sometimes storylines in movies teach you courage, and you're like, I was in that same situation, and look how that person dealt with it. I can do it now too. So I think it gets a lot bigger when you think of it that way.
Sure. I think that's the power of art, right?
It's very important.
So take us through this network that I'm assuming just kind of becomes bigger as you get out there and start putting yourselves and your project out there. You raise the finance. When did you go into production, and take us through the trials and tribulations of producing still what is, a micro budget or low budget film?
So I think we financed from January to about beginning of April, and then we started pre-production in March, as we were kind of like at that point 70 to 75% of the way with our green light figure. And we're like, okay, we got to go, we're moving, and that helped us close the gap too. But it was like middle of March. I think even like end of February we were location scouting. And it was crazy. I mean, it was nuts. Pre-production felt very chaotic. I think mostly because, again, you're working with a smaller budget, and you can't necessarily pay, your department heads for prep, right? So, you're working out deals for interest share and trying to squeeze as much time as possible out of your department heads to sit down with you for an hour or 2 hours, out of sometimes once every couple weeks. But you figure it out, again, it's like that target draws forth the arrow. Like, what do we absolutely pragmatically need to do to get this film off the ground? Like, I have the vision in my head for what we're going to do when we all get there, but like, what do we need to do to just get there, just to show up, right?
And there were certain pieces that, once they stopped being stressful, and I actually kind of looked at certain things like kind of a fun puzzle, then it was like, oh, now I'm getting into the flow of this. Like, I really like this. It's like you're doing little puzzles every step of the way. And so one of them, I remember, I don't know why this left the biggest impact on me, but we were sitting with our DP, who, by the way, if I had a lot more in the budget to give someone, it would be him, because he put in so much work and he didn't even ask for more. He didn't want more. So we would like give him more as we went, because we're like, you did a lot of prep work, or you did this, because he was just so invaluable. And someone like that, like, you just find more money for them.
Yeah, and he was really invested too. He's a very talented director of photography that I met in film school, and he's just one of those collaborators where, you know, you have those initial conversations and he has that fire and drive and knowing like what this project could mean if he goes the extra mile for him selfishly too, right? Because he's making beautiful images. But he's smart
enough to know that. That's the thing, is like, he sees how he can play a part in the overall scope of what we're doing, but he took it on as if it was his own, like as if he wrote it and was directing it, right? He took it on, and to the point where like a person like that, and what a teammate that is, like, that's invaluable. Like, I can't wait till he will win an Academy Award, mark my words. He will win one day, and he will be getting a lot of money for what he's doing. But right now he's like, this is where I'm at, and he never lets any little stuff get in his way. He's not ever lazy. He's not ever like, because I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to do. He's acting and working like his life depends on it. And it does, and it will, because he's that good. But the story I was going to tell is like, one day we were all sitting around the table trying to problem solve this set, because we needed a hallway, right? And of all the locations we scouted, the hardest thing to find was this hallway. We couldn't find this hallway that would fit with our other pieces. Well, and to fill in some
context too, we needed to match the hallway with a like larger warehouse set that was like the performance venue for our pop star. So it was like this raw industrial warehouse, and we're like, we need this very specific, like textured, gritty hallway.
Yeah, and certain dimensions and certain lighting, and we needed to gel with the cuts from the green room that he goes into to this performance space, and it's like, it just wasn't working out. And so one day I remember we're like, what if we build this hallway with these like large, you know, kind of like promotional images for this pop star and for this
like
whole
pop-up walls, like graphic fabric,
like you'd see at an event show. Which fortunately John's dad is in that world. My dad's
in trade show marketing, so that was awesome. And that's probably made me think of the idea. I was like, wait, I think I've seen this before with this image in my head of what I.
So John actually designed like these graphic images that then got blown up onto these large pieces of fabric, and you slip them over a frame, and we essentially built this hallway, and our DP like lit it so it looks so, I mean. And I just remember sitting there, we could not problem solve this. And then I'm like, what if we fake the hallway? And then they came up with like it was just one of those cool moments, because you can see it in the film. And I'm like, do you remember the day we came up with that? It looked so cool. And it worked. I mean, it worked. And it was like, just a win, you know, just felt
I think to go back to your question, like overall, like in prep, you know, it's so important to we literally had papers up on this bulletin board here behind us. At that time, it was at our apartment in LA. But like each sheet of paper had the department on it, and like those items of like what we needed to do, all the tasks per department. So just like separating everything and just seeing it all together. You know, you could zoom in, but also track like how progress is going in each department. I mean, this is just a learning process for us. Hindsight being 2020 for the next project. Whether it's a line producer or probably a UPM would be more of this position, but having someone just keeping time, because I felt like, you know, everyone was so spread out working remotely because of COVID, and people were working jobs, that just to have someone, you know, hired and designated specifically to keeping time and making sure just the schedule of pre-production leading up to production is everything is like happening when it should and as it should.
And I think just like finding what works best for you communication wise, right? Because there's so many like apps out there. Okay, do you like to use Slack? Do you want to use this? Do you want to use that? And for whatever reason, I ended up liking using Google Keep, because it's, you know, you just make a list, but you can share it with each of the department heads. Like, here's production design, and as they check something off, you can literally just see that it was checked off. So you don't have to bug them 90 times a day. So that's kind of nice. And I learned that through this process. I'm like, everyone needs, you know, like a Mila note is another design tool online where you can go in and literally do like fabric swatches, color swatches, like location links, notes to people. So I'm like, every person or every department head needs a mail a note page and the Google Keep right on there, so they can just keep everything organized. And then as a producer, you can go in and just kind of check, like, how's everybody doing? Does anyone need help with anything? And then not bother them more than need be. So I was just like, kind of like you and your organization, was trying to find my own like source of, so you don't feel like, where was that message we sent? Was it a text? Was it Instagram? Was it, because that gets freaking crazy.
And everyone really understanding what those modes of communication are. Yeah, you're right. It's so vital.
And like what date, I think like John was saying, like a UPM would help us, but by what date do we need X, Y, and Z done? And I think now that
this, I think what it really is, it's like the tricky thing of being producers, right? And then she was also acting in the film and I was directing. So it's like we needed someone that we could, be subordinate to almost, that we would have to report to.
Tell us what to do.
No,
like at a certain point it needed a flip so that we could go into our other positions and they could jump in as us and we could be like, so what are we doing again?
And we had two great co-producers on this as well that totally picked up the slack where we needed monitoring the finances, taking control of the bank accounts and just general accounting, that because we didn't have an accountant during production. And one of them filled the shoes as a UPM when it came time for production as well.
Even like filing with SAG, things like that like is a multi-step process. You always have to call someone back a million times. Our co-producer was great at that. But But yeah, and this would be different, obviously, if someone is just producing the film and they're not acting in it or directing it. It would be a little bit different for them, because they could just stay the producer the whole time. But the fact that we did have to kind of flip into different roles was like, now we know what we need to support us in doing that, because we will probably always do that.
And we did touch on this before the call, but how important is it to have been through that process now of producing, financing a film, producing a film, and what does that mean for you in terms of what's next?
I think first of all, it's like exactly what we just were talking about. I know like when things need to happen now a little more, and then the next project will be different. So like you're only still taking a shot in the dark, because as much as you can be prepared, things still come up every step of the way. Like you know that it's like people think that, one of our co-producers, and I love her, she was doing so much work, she was like stressed at a certain point. I'm like, honey, I don't think it's ever going to be different. I'm like, you might feel like it's because we're new. And I said, but I think there's always surprises in everything you do. And then I was listening to the Deacons podcast, and they've done millions of movies now, right? And they say that they're like, every single time I walk on set, it's like it's the first day all over again. Like I've never done it before. Because
I think it's just getting comfortable in that state, and that's like
putting
the
out
most
fires.
Exciting part of it too. Like when you get to set and it's like that, especially the first day, you're like so anxious. You're like, oh my gosh, here we go, we're doing it. But then you get into, okay, like the grips are doing their thing, the gaffer's working with the DP, the actors are in makeup.
And you remember like that everyone actually knows what to do.
Everyone knows what to do, and the energy the mojo starts to kick in. And you just ride that energy. Like that is what art is. You're going into the unknown and carving a path.
I do remember that first day though, because I was going to act right off the bat. And then I was also like, how much do I need to be like running around checking on everyone to make sure they're okay? And then I just was kind of immobilized, and I just kind of sat there. And later one of like the camera crew was like, yeah, I thought you just really didn't want to talk to me. Like I was like, oh, she's kind of, and I was like, no, I just needed 5 seconds to stare at the wall to like let it all go. I was like, I needed to be like, I'm gonna act. If someone needs me, come get me. And then after that first day, everything like flowed so well. But yeah, the first day you have so much energy and you're like all the anticipation. But then once you get into it, it's fine. But that is the answer, I think, is like learning everything that we learned the hard way, because no matter what you're doing, I mean, like we moved into a house and started doing a bunch of DIY stuff, like light electrical work. Every time you put up a light, it gets easier. But the first time, that learning curve is horrible. And it's like that with anything you're doing, simple, complex, emotional, not emotional. There's a learning curve. So we know X, Y, and Z from doing this first project so that we can skate through those next time. However, a huge host of other things will come up. And you just have to like that. Otherwise, this is a terrifying career field for you.
Yeah, I think it just comes, it's so true. I mean, it comes back to, what do you really want to do? Like, what is the life you want to live? If you want to be a producer, if you want to be a director, you'll, no matter how scared you are or how much you think you're inadequate or incompetent, you'll throw yourself into the fire. Because I mean, this goes into my favorite, here we go with the quotes again, but my favorite public intellectual, he's a clinical psychologist out of Toronto, Canada, Jordan Peterson, says, like, if you really want to do something but you're scared to do it, like, what are you doing? What's the opportunity cost of that? Like, what are you doing anyways? Can you live with yourself? Because you're going to have to pay either way. There's going to be a price to be paid. You might pay for it in your anxiety and your overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, pie in the sky dream, and you're going to be haunted by that dream.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really what the baseline of what it came down to for us is, like, the fear of doing it was not nearly as great as the fear of not doing it. Right. The fear of not doing it is life ending. The fear of doing it, like, just turn it into adrenaline and ride it, just get excited, and then put people around you in your crew and on your team that are also like that are not naysayers. Like, you talked about this very early on. Learn who's not a member of the team and then get rid of them, because they're just because then they make you feel bad about everything that you're learning as you go, but it will never not be that way. So that just sounds like they might not be cut out for that, or they might not like that adrenaline, or the, this is wrong, what do we do? You have 20 seconds to make a decision. You have to like that, and you have to have all the people around you like that and understand. And again, back to our DP, he was like, okay, here's what we do. Just like, who is this guy? He's like, you guys go to lunch. I'm going to stay with me, because it was only me. He's like, we're going to stay through lunch and just get this shot. And I was like, man, I love this guy.
It was a close up. We had to do this shot where the camera needed to be attached to the drawer. It was like a close up on her as the drawer was opening. The camera would slide out with the drawer and reveal her face. And we just couldn't get, like, the camera rigged to the drawer the way we needed it to be. And it was just like, all right, we're going to send everyone else to lunch.
We're going to
three of us are going to sit there. We're going to get it done.
So.
Nice. Well, guys, almost at the end here. So any parting advice for any filmmakers considering going through this journey, and also anyone considering working with me or us at Exile?
Well, we have also sent you one of our close friends. She's in that spot right now that we were laughing yesterday. We're like, because we love her so much and she's so bright.
She's awesome.
She's right there at that moment before she's going to step off the cliff, and she's just got to, like, get her brain and her heart together. I'm like, the quote I would say to someone is, Nike said it best, just do it.
Or was that Shia LaBeouf?
No, just do it. Oh yeah. Tell everyone to watch that video with Shia LaBeouf saying, just do it. Like, when we were having it off,
that would be my parting advice.
It just makes you laugh and also be like, yeah, he was right. But
you might put that as like a suggested video at the end of this one.
Put it up.
Totally.
Do, because that's all there is to it. There's if there is an alternative for you and you're okay doing some other job, then do that other job. Because but if you're like sitting there and it's eating away at you even a little bit every day, then you have to do this. You have to do it, and know that, like any learning curve, after the first time you do it, the confidence you have, the fact that you can just repeat it and do it again, and the fact that you have a resource in you. Like, can you imagine, like, before the internet, we couldn't have done this. Like, appreciate the miracles that are before you, the things at your fingertips, although I know they can be, it's almost more crippling sometimes because there's so much out there. But this in particular, it's like, this was a hands-on, holistic approach. We had everything we needed to do this. And when we were scared, you were there, and you're just so logical and factual, and you have proof behind everything you do. And without you, we would have probably been crippled with fear for a lot longer than we were. And you being like, now's the time, friends. Are you ready to do it?
Go.
You gotta do it now. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I would just add to that, if anyone's starting this process, they could think about it before they start the accelerator. But I would really dwell or sort of like, meditate on this as you're starting the accelerator is how important it is to invest in your relationships. That's, people on your production team, in that inner circle of producers or co-producers, department heads, most certainly, actors, as if you're a director, that whole creative team, but also as a producer in your investors, people who are contributing to your film, down the line, distributors and sales agents, make that personal one-on-one connection, and don't be afraid, again, like she said, of the rejection, or if things don't work out, like that wasn't meant to be who you are, and make the films that you want to make, the stories you want to tell, and just trust that someone else out there is going to receive that energy or that intention of yours and want to join the team. Like I really believe in that. I think no matter how rough or shitty that first film is, like someone's going to see something in your intention and your drive and perseverance to
and to kind of wrap up the bookends of what we've talked about this entire time, when we first started talking we mentioned like it was at the beginning of COVID, like the very beginning of COVID, when we started this thought process of doing this. We had gone to the Idlewild Film Festival, and that's actually where we were when we found out like COVID was hitting. And now it's a couple years later, and the first festival that we applied to was that festival, like because it happened perfectly at the end of our picture lock. So we applied to that and we got in, and we've been nominated for 10 awards. Wow. And so it's like it was just such a beautiful like bookended and just a little vote of encouragement of like, just send your thing out there, have faith. Have faith
and have fun too.
Have fun. It's so much fun because that's
like get the idea of like making an Oscar-winning film or trying to be Martin Scorsese or whatever out of your head. Like just have fun figuring things out.
Yeah, and the biggest worry that you should have, because you should do the accelerator program, because I mean, I can't say enough about it. Like we needed your support, and we got that. And I feel like my biggest fear in life now is the fact that I just never want to do anything other than this. Like I want to just keep doing it. So that's what people should fear, is like once they do that first one, they're going to get so addicted to it that it's like, what are we doing? When's our next one? So we've already started going into our next one, because it was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life and most purposeful. And it just was reinforcing of like, okay, this is what we're meant to do.
Yeah. So thank you to you as well, Alexi, for being you and doing what you do, your work. Seriously. and your path. Thank you very much.
Oh no, of course. I'm glad
very grateful
I could play a part in it. And we will include some links to the film and the production company in the video below. Neon Bleed hopefully will be out, I reckon, sometime later this year, given it's the start of the year. So we'll link everything in the video so everyone can check it out. Guys, thank you so much for catching up. It was awesome to hear about the journey in more detail. And no doubt we'll be in touch about that next film.
Definitely.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Thanks for everything.
Bye-bye.
Bye.